So Jason, thank you for joining me on this opinion series we're running. I just wanted to start by, asking you what you do in the e-commerce space, because, obviously some of our followers or users may not know who you are.
Oh, that crushes me, but but absolutely true. Look, I've worked in e-commerce specifically for over 20 years, and I've worked across basically merchant and agency side, and I've owned my own e-commerce pure play in the past as well for nearly 8 years. So I guess I don't have quite the trifecta yet because I haven't worked for a technology provider yet, but I've definitely worked across the pretty much the full gamut of everything else, with a particular focus and a bent towards the technology side of e-commerce as opposed to the marketing side of e-commerce, or at least on the marketing side, it's the technology driven part of digital marketing that I really know the most about. And really now I've got my own e-commerce consultancy, but it's really more full spectrum commerce consultancy business that basically helps businesses to align people, process, technology, and data for a great customer experience. That's what I do.
Cool, that makes sense. Look, I think being on the tech side is certainly exposes you to a lot of up and coming tools and changes, right? So let's get straight into it. What is your view on multi-marketplace selling, and how important is it to be on multiple channels?
Yeah, we're now speaking from the merchant perspective. Yeah. Yeah, look, I think we're leading down a path where within the next sort of say decade, commerce is literally going to be everywhere. With IoT, with 5G, with mobile devices, literally you're going to be able to execute commerce on almost every single touchable, physical, seeable, tastable thing out there, and it's just going to be woven into the very fabric of who we are. It's going to be part of glass, it's going to be part of windows, it's going to be part of just everything that we do and have, and our clothes are going to be net connected. Our fridge and our pantry is going to be net connected, our vehicles are net connected. So commerce is going to literally be everywhere, and I feel like marketplaces are just another natural evolution of that and another channel. And yes, they're an absolutely very, very critical channel for I would say most businesses, not all. There's plenty of businesses that don't have a marketplace play at all today. But I think as social commerce in particular becomes common, and they get used to being, selling across multiple transactional channels other than just their own e-commerce website, that will start to give them the tech, the underlying omni-channel capability to be able to push products out to marketplaces and to bring orders back for fulfillment from marketplaces. So in many cases, it's a lack of an omni-channel mindset, but it's also a lack of omni-channel technology that allows them to sell on marketplaces at scale. But it is absolutely mission critical, and it's going to grow more important as marketplaces take more and more market share from traditional standalone e-commerce websites.
Yeah, look, I think I think a lot of people share that same view, Jason, and just to kind of tie it back to Merchant Spring, I'm sure the visibility challenges will be right there, right, when there's a multitude of channels. But I guess, I guess where I'm kind of wanting to steer this is, where do you see, obviously you believe multi-channel is important, right? But where do you see marketplace selling evolving to in the next, 12 months? Obviously in Australia and New Zealand, we've seen a lot of marketplaces kind of appear, but where do you see that evolving to? Further marketplaces, less consolidation? Like, how do you see the industry playing that out?
Yeah, look, I think in the short term, there's going to be more marketplaces and more merchants selling on them. I think in the medium to long term, there's definitely market consolidation that's going to happen. I think that particularly in Australia, Australia seems to be rapidly approaching a state of being over marketplaced. It feels like there's a new marketplace launching every week. There's over 10 very, very successful, very popular marketplaces in Australia, operating in Australia, and they're all growing market share. versus say standalone websites. So they're all doing pretty well. But yet, amongst the majors, there's still a lot of catalog overlap between those marketplaces, and there's a lot of merchant overlap. So is there enough place for an unlimited amount of marketplaces? No, I think we're going to strike a balance eventually between supply and demand of products, marketplaces, merchants. And I think we're pretty rapidly approaching that level, probably in Australia faster than anywhere else, just because of the radical adoption of marketplaces. In New Zealand, I think there's probably room for a couple more players, just because, Trade Me's been so dominant in New Zealand for so many years that the market really is the first new marketplace that's had a shot at kind of dethroning Trade Me as the sole and king of marketplaces in New Zealand. And in the bottom end, we've got Facebook Market, which is nipping at the heels of, because of the high costs of selling goods secondhand on Trade Me. For people that are trying to sell stuff secondhand, Trade Me Market with no cost is nipping at their heels at the bottom end. So I think they're getting pressurized top and bottom. But in general, I think short term, more marketplaces, more merchants selling on them. Medium to long term, there's going to be some market consolidation where there's too many marketplaces.
Yeah, interesting. Again, I think some people are certainly starting to think about that question of what's going to happen to the a large number of marketplaces in these markets down here. But I think that brings me to my final question for this session is, being in New Zealand, Jason, you're probably closest to the news here of the latest and greatest. So what's the latest view of Amazon and New Zealand and how that's playing out, and how do you feel that'll kind of impact that market, given that Trade Me and the market, I guess, are two big players there?
Yeah, look, I think if you'd asked me this, 5 years ago, I think we would have been having a very different discussion. But I think because of the success of Amazon in Australia, and because of them just about ready to open their largest automated warehouse facility in Sydney later this year, and the proximity of the Australian market to the New Zealand market, and the similarity of language, the similarity of tastes, and the similarity of culture, it feels like very much a no-brainer for them to be here. Now, eBay tried this many years ago and failed miserably, but that was when there was no Facebook Market, when there was no the market, when basically Trade Me was the dominant player here, and basically no one else could break in because they were such a solid incumbent. The market is very different now, and so not only are Kiwi consumers already buying off of international marketplaces anyway, and so they're used to buying offshore. They're used to waiting a week for products to get to them, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They're used to buying off of AliExpress. They're used to buying from pretty much any supplier or vendor or marketplace that can give them the goods that they want, or even the goods that they don't necessarily know they want yet, at a reasonable price, and get it to them at a reasonable cost with a reasonable speed. So it's an absolute no-brainer for them. I think what will, they probably won't, at least in the medium term, localize on a .co.nz domain. They're just doing it off of the .com.au domain with a subset of the Aussie catalog. And I think that that's probably going to stay that way for the foreseeable future, at least for, say, a year to 2 years. They'll dip their toes in the water. They'll see what's successful. Then they'll decide, okay, is it a big enough market to justify having a local distribution warehouse in Auckland, for example, doing some middle mile services maybe, or contracting for middle and last mile locally. And then I think the game changer is not so much localized website. I think it's localized Prime. So Amazon has not announced anything about Prime, even in its current guise, for Australians being available to Kiwis. So it doesn't look like Prime will be available to Kiwis at this time. But if and when it is, and if it's localized through local partnerships that bring tangible benefits to Kiwis beyond the products and beyond the fulfillment and maybe free shipping or cheap shipping, I think that's the game changer for them. And I think that's what we'll see skyrocketing adoption, as we've seen Prime drive massive adoption and stickiness of Amazon everywhere else in the world where Prime is available.
Yeah, interesting. I think you're probably onto something there. And look, I personally am looking forward to seeing what Amazon does in New Zealand. But look, let's leave it there. And I think all of your opinions and views on these things are certainly interesting, and especially the New Zealand piece, which I think is certainly on the minds of a number of Amazon sellers. But obviously they're not as close to the market as you are. So again, thank you for making the time to do this with me.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and look forward to doing it with you in the future.
Thanks, Jason.